found a way to really work really, really well together. We often also say I'm the one with the million ideas and Remo is the one who kills 95% of them, which is very important.
Love killing ideas.
Sometimes I get really upset if I want to design for the 100th time a new menu, and every time I want to custom make new servingware, and it's like this is not so you can't every time order new servingware for 2,000 Swiss francs just because it looks better.
In this episode, I'm talking with Sue Tobler and Remo Gisi, the ETH alumni behind Tastelab. Tastelab turns science into flavor, creating an experience where physics meets food, and how an ETH spinoff rethinks the future of food. This is the We Are ETH podcast, and I'm Susan Kish, your host. So I have to ask you this question, right? Why food, right? You are, if I understand correctly, a physicist and a computer scientist. So I'm sure there's a Venn diagram. I'm just not visualizing it.
Why food? I think that was always a big passion of ours. When I met Sue, I was actually quite passionate about food, but I think she taught me to cook well and to also appreciate the event hosting with loads of guests to make happy and serve food too. And I think that was just a passion of ours.
I think in my case, I grew up with a mother who is very, very passionate and talented about cooking, but everything creative, so not just food. And I was lucky enough to grow up with all these possibilities in the kitchen, but also creatively. And so I just loved cooking. I loved cooking for events. I think I cooked for our neighbor's housewarming party. I did the catering when I was 11, which was my first paid catering.
11?
11,
I'm
yes.
impressed.
Also, there's the, by now, almost famous story in the media that when I was in secondary school, we went to a school camp for a week. And the plan was that they were rotating teams of students cooking. And in the end, it was me doing all the cooking. I didn't participate in any other program, really. But as a 12-year-old, I think, I absolutely loved it. I did handmade gnocchi, which for an 11-year-old, for 40 people is quite a lot. But I absolutely loved it. And I went to all details with bringing my own tableware because I didn't like the tableware in this house. So it was about food, but also about everything around it from a very early age. But I've been lucky enough to get a lot of that from my mom.
So you've been quoted as saying, cooking is physics. And Remo, you talked about how you used algorithms, the structure and the concepts about algorithms, right? And apply it to sort of how you design these things. Yes, is cooking really just physics? I thought it was physics and chemistry. And biology.
Well, I'm a physicist, and we say physics, biology, and chemistry is just a subpart of physics. But
yeah, just as the math people would say that physics is just applied math, and I mean computer science is very close to math and physics in a sense, and I think we talk a lot about like processes and in a way algorithms when we work in gastronomy. So every day we do a catering, we define a lot of processes. A recipe is just an algorithm, if you want, and also a service setup is just an algorithm where you make people walk instead of electrons in a computer. So there's a lot of algorithms in our everyday life, and I think that does make sense as a computer scientist, but admittedly it's not the most direct relation to my studies.
Well, actually, Remo, could you define an algorithm, right? Because it's one of these wonderful, slightly confusing, really intense terms that people use a lot, but I've never actually understood what it is. Is it a formula?
It's hard to do this spontaneously, but I think you might describe it as a series of steps or instructions that create a solution, that find a solution to a problem. And the problem can either be create a good ChatGPT answer when you enter a prompt, or the problem could be make an efficient food service to 300 guests, where every guest it doesn't wait for the food longer than X minutes or whatever.
I have to say, Remo now makes it sound very kind of technical and to me almost like unromantic.
It's an ETH podcast.
It's an ETH podcast, fair enough. But it's
You'll have a lot of engineers
true
listening.
that we are we're often in the space of caterers where there is cooking. Cooking itself is, yes, every recipe is an algorithm, as you say, and I really like to look or think about, if I go about a recipe, what the sequence is and how can I apply it to different ingredients and really think out of the box this way. And obviously, if you organize a big event, a lot of it is logistics and a lot of it is organization of structures. And yes, there you can think about it as an algorithm, but in the end, it's about people and it's about emotions. And especially when it comes to food, it's such a close to the soul topic to most people. So it's important to us, although we might go about it if we design a recipe, or even if I just make my shopping list for a very big catering, I go about it in a very analytical way with tools I've learned when I worked at the reinsurance industry, which are super handy to do the same because it's basically just data analysis. But in the end, this doesn't have to translate to the front, what we transport to people, because food needs to be fun, delicious, exciting. And sometimes we tell this story about the scientific thinking behind it or the process if it's part of it, but it doesn't need to be. So that's the thing where you need to kind of tailor make your offering to the audience, because some people are super tech interested and they want to hear all about the way I organize my shopping list with pivot tables, and other people are just, I want to have delicious, beautiful food, and that's fine as well.
How do you create the magic? I went to your banquet at your 2040 many years ago up on the top of the mountain. It was a fabulous evening, right? There must have been like 12 courses. I had the sense you've been working on it for months. And there were liqueurs and wines that curated, and you guys had made some and others. And it was just the most fabulous experience. It was also the only time when I saw a dinner party spontaneously stand up and give you a standing ovation at the end.
That was a special event moment for us too, yeah, where really what we thought and thought about and created over weeks. You're absolutely right. This takes weeks to create a menu tailor-made for an event like this and to test the recipes and the setup and the storytelling around it. But then if it's a almost magical match with the audience and the mood and the people, I think that was definitely a highlight in our Tastelab career, where the two things just melted so beautifully together and people were so interested and passionate in food, but also the story around it. Because again, there's not always the same capacity to learn all about what we thought. Sometimes the food just has to speak for itself. And there was really the time and space for people to learn all about it. Yes.
Yeah, that was a great job for us as well, because we don't very often get the request to combine the food with a lot of the themes and stories around the event. And if we can do that, and I think your 2040 was very outstanding in that regard, that we had the explicit job to actually take up all the topics of this 3 or 4 day event and represent them in the food and take them up in our menu cards and visualize them and tell the stories along the food service. And I think that's a really cool opportunity for us to entertain, to create experiences for our guests that go beyond just what's on your plate.
So can we go from the abstract to a real story? Let's say I wanted to do a session. I'm here in New York. I'm at a friend's apartment. I've commandeered their dining room. And you want to do a story about this crisis around climate right now in the United States, right? There's a session that we're going to be having about the future of climate investing. On one hand, people seem very excited to invest. On the other hand, people are slightly concerned about the uncertainty. How about that for democratic or discrete phrasing? How would you translate something? Let's say you had to do a dinner at the end of a day like that. How would you translate those kinds of tensions and concerns and world trends into a menu and an experience? Or how would you at least approach it?
That's a good question. I think at first it would be very important to get the customers, in that case, your wishes, your specification for what you want to bring across, how you want this experience to play out. Should it be something like light and playful, or should it be more like sinister, and can it be like a bit more, I'd say, intense, and also how much time do the guests have, how much, also a bit, of course, depends a bit on the budget as well, but very importantly, how much time and how much headspace do the guests bring to the table, and how much of the time that we have can we invest in storytelling around the food. I think just eating enough food to be sated is something that can happen very, very quickly. As we see on the streets every day, that can be a matter of minutes. But a long dinner can be a matter of hours. And in that time, it's very relevant how we can actually spend the guests' focus, and how we can, what kind of experiences we can deliver. And then we would think of like how much of it can be intellectual, like visualized data, like things to read, things to analyze, and in a sense that can be on a menu card or as a decoration in the background or something like that. And how much of it should be interactive? How much should guests be moving or doing things themselves? We had great experiences where people could play with liquid nitrogen, which is fun because it smokes through the whole room and everything. So a lot of what we can do and what we would like to do is then defined by the formats we have and by how we use the time and the space to
But
deliver
maybe
that
chipping in
experience.
with the topic, because you've touched upon the subject of sustainability, which has really been also from our perspective kind of almost a roller coaster, where the whole attention to this started and where it's gone since. So when we started looking into sustainability in food, it was a topic people really wanted to hear about and learn about, and this had a space in a catering. We could communicate with actual data, and people appreciated this. For us, it's important, and especially when it comes to food, that sustainability is often about what you shouldn't do. Don't fly there, don't buy this, don't eat this. It's very often very negative, or people get very defeated and feel like, well, I can't do this is impossible anyway, why do I even bother? So we went down the road of, let's show how it could be. And then we can talk about it, or even bring the data into the menu if you want to know the hardcore facts. But if we can just serve a delicious, innovative, mind-opening dinner or a meal, and with that show how, at least from a culinary side, a more sustainable world could look like, I think that's a much nicer message to receive as a kind of one evening solution, instead of don't do this, don't do that. And I think with that, we had a lot of success. And also, to translate to our cooking since 2020, we're cooking completely plant-based. Because we looked into the data and felt like, well, not that everybody has to eat plant-based, but to send a clear message and kind of also push ourselves where you can bring cooking with no animal products. It's I think to some people mind-blowing what we can do with it, and they need to experience it. It's not enough just to show data and say, oh, it's much better if you don't eat this and don't eat that, or reduce it, but let's see it, let's show it, let's taste it and experience it.
So where does the science come into what you just talked about? So one of the products I was reading about that I love to taste is your plant-based foie gras, right? I love foie gras. I'd love to try your foie gras. How did your background in science and the discipline of, what the ETH represents, how did you approach it scientifically?
So it's been a while since I've eaten foie gras, but I think it was triggered by a menu we designed where we really wanted to take up these products which would traditionally be served in a luxury product, and how it would be served. And we thought, how can we reinvent this? And in the end, it really came down to kind of narrowing down what the flavor profile is. And then you work with, there's a bit of umami, let's add shiitake powder. It's a bit red and earthy, let's add some beetroot powder. There's some bitterness to it, and let's add some tahini, so the flavor profile. But then actually with foie gras, a lot of it is the mouthfeel and the melting point. So if you take it in your mouth, it's not something you want to chew, it kind of has to melt. So one of the most challenging parts actually was to figure out the combination of plant-based fats. So you have the right stability at room temperature, but then a nice melting point at around 35, 36 degrees when you put it in your mouth. And there we can go about it in a very scientific way, yes. But there were also, I think, like 20 variations of it before we arrived at our final recipe.
I'm impressed if it's only 20, right?
It wasn't much more.
No, it wasn't much more, but also I think because we know, and I've seen this often with other chefs, that if they make something and they make an iteration, they change more than one thing. And if you change more than one thing and you have another result, you can't go back and narrow down what changed it. So you need to go about it in a very mathematic way. So say, I don't like the melting point, so I'm going to change the composition of fats. And then you can go about this, and once you like the composition of the fats, then you can go and change the composition of the flavor. But if you do both or change other things at the same time, you can't narrow down the influence of the result. You can't go back. And yes, this is when people ask, well, how are you different in the kitchen than maybe somebody else? This is not that we sit there and think, how can we extra introduce the mindset of a scientist, but that's just how we think. That's how we were trained, brainwashed at ETH.
Sort of test and hypothesis thing, right? It is how scientists theoretically approach these things, right? You have a hypothesis and you learn a huge amount every time it doesn't work.
Yes.
So also the search for the perfect combination of ingredients would be a very classical computer science problem, like a first year's textbook issue to sort of get the right melting point by test and narrowing it down to the search room you want to work in.
So let's switch to your time at ETH. My bet is that the two of you did not enter your first year of ETH thinking you would start Tastelab. That's just
That's true. Yeah.
Hypothesis, right? How did you guys meet? And talk about your time at ETH.
I think when during my first year, I met a lot of new people, and some of them were in the Students Association, which is at ETH is a very established format that the Students Association does a lot of things. They do like they do college politics, but they also do events, and they do events where it's mostly like bar and
polyball.
Yeah, volleyball, which is more like a classic dance ball, but then also they do event where it's more like DJ and bars. So, but they also do excursions to the mountains or whatever, and they do a lot of these events. And I think I got sucked into this whole circus of the Students Association a bit. I liked to work at the bar. I like to organize things. It was really fun because you get all those people who basically work for free. Plus, you get a budget from the student organization, so you can actually do things, and that gives you a whole playground to sort of explore possibilities in the event business, if you like. Yeah, it wasn't a business; it was more like a hobby. But yeah, we learned a lot, and that's also where I met Sue. Sue was even crazier than I. She did the same. She did the same things, but on like a one scale higher. Yeah.
Well, I was at the roof organization of the students, where you organize kind of parties for all students, whereas Remo was at the one for just the computer scientists. But yeah, to me, loving organizing events, food parties, like it was an amazing playground. As Remo said, everything was voluntarily. Like there was no salaried job for neither ourselves nor everybody who worked at these events. But there was a budget from the Student Association to throw these parties or events. And yeah, I think when I first applied, I finished ETH and applied to my first job. I think the section of extracurricular stuff like that was much, much longer than because other people went to do kind of serious internships at consulting companies and banks and whatever. I didn't have any of that, but I had, I think, over $1.5 million turnover in events I just did during my studies. So what we were able to learn there and teach ourselves, because that was amazing. And also how we kind of taught ourselves to do everything ourselves, because it was always, there was budget, but not really to hire someone. So if you had to do a logo,
right.
Well, you have to teach it yourself. Right. If you have to do catering for 400 people helping, throwing a huge event, well, you have to cook it yourself. So I think the mindset of thinking we can teach it ourselves and do it ourselves really comes from there. And there wasn't another option. But now I think that's a beauty of our work, because we work in such a broad way, from cooking, designing, logistics, event curation. And yeah, people ask, who's your designer? Who's your head chef? Who's the person curating these events? Like it's mostly us two.
So did the two of you quit your job before you did your first sort of pop-up at the ETH? Or
I did.
Did you
Sue
have
did.
dinner and say, we're both sick and tired of this? Or how did this happen?
No, Sue quit her job right away.
I quit my job in a goal-setting meeting with my boss, spontaneously. Well, while setting the goals, I kind of realized, no.
Not really my goal.
I don't want to do any of this.
Yeah.
And we had a good cry together. I think it was very off textbook, but yeah, that was it. And I just leaped into it. I knew I wanted to do something with food. It wasn't, at this point, not clear at all that it would become kind of at the intersection of science and cooking. I just knew I loved cooking. I wanted to do maybe something caterings, events, maybe pop-ups were huge at the time, 10 years ago. But the science part actually only came in later because because that's just how we go about things. And then once we realized we can make this part of our story and make this our unique kind of standpoint and unique approach to things, we really used that. But it was always there. It was just not in the beginning clear that it would be such a visible part of it. And you then?
Yeah, for me, there was a sabbatical. So I was employed in an IT job. I sort of liked the company and I didn't feel very bad about having that job. It was just not a very, very passionate thing. And so I asked for a 3-month sabbatical to join Sue in the project team for the first big Tastelab project. And after that, I stayed on board. And after I think 10 months or 12 months after that, I finally quit my IT job and worked full-time for Tastelab from then on.
Very cool. Very cool.
It was also a very, very good decision, in terms of financial security, because I had the chance to sort of see if that new venture of ours would sort of be feasible at all, and I still had a little bit of income from my IT job.
So you were able to make a smooth transition.
Totally, yeah.
I don't do smooth.
Sue doesn't do smooth, that's right.
I didn't think so. Not if you quit during a goal-setting conversation. And you two had kept in touch? Like you would have dinner parties? Or how did you keep in touch in those years where you had sold your soul to work in the corporate world?
Yeah, we just kind of the same circles.
That's an exaggeration.
No, yeah.
Wasn't that bad.
Wasn't that bad?
I don't think we have a soul.
No, we're just kind of the people we stayed in touch with. We knew from studying together. And yes, there were a lot of very extravagant dinner parties and cooking pretty much the whole day to have a dinner in the evening. But also, we traveled a lot. Like there was this group of kind of 5 to 10 people where almost once every 5-6 weeks we would travel.
We did fun food trips all over Europe.
Basically just to go and eat. And that was amazing. So the passion for food and eating and traveling.
That was great. There is actually here in Boston, well, not here in Boston, where I live, there is a tradition of fabulous applied science majors, applied math majors becoming sort of the leading pastry chef in Boston. I mean, there is a world where those two things intersect. How do your personalities work together? Right? Do you have a whole team or is it just the two of you?
Our coworkers say that we are like an old, how to say, alt A-par.
An old married couple.
An old married couple.
We often behave and also sometimes bicker like an old married couple. Because it's Tastelab and we've gone through a couple of rounds, but essentially it's Remo and me. And there's a third person we know from ETH as well, he does our accounting as for fun.
Hi, Rafi.
Hi, Rafi. But we've known each other for a very long time and working together since 10 years now. And just two of us, we're not a big team, it's just the two of us. So basically everything we do goes through 2 heads, 2 notebooks, 2 hands.
4 hands.
4 hands, 2 times 2 sets of hands.
2 heads, 4 heads.
not that good at math. And so for that to work, this is you're my business husband, and this it has to work on many levels. And also if you have your own company, there's a lot of hardship, there's a lot of financial stress. There's because also it's just the two of us. We can redefine what we do every single day, and sometimes I felt like we did every week. And there's nobody. You're completely free, which is a huge pro, but also you can get completely lost in what you do and why you do it, and every now and then you have to get yourself back to the drawing board and say, what is we actually do and why? How is this working? And I think in this regard, over the 10 years, we found a way to really work really, really well together. We often also say I'm the one with the million ideas, and Remo is the one who kills 95% of them, which is very important.
Love killing ideas.
Sometimes I get really upset if I want to design for the 100th time a new menu, and every time I want to custom make new servingware, and
of course,
like this is not, you can't every time order new servingware for 2,000 Swiss francs just because it looks better. But I think it's the balance between the two, and yeah,
I think we both have almost a fear of becoming repetitive and becoming caged in our own creation of our business and doing a sort of a year by year, road by road business that just cages us for the rest of our lives. And every time we sort of look back on the running or the last business year, we realize, oh, we've done completely new things, and we've learned stuff that we did for the first time. And I think that's great to have a company that keeps you doing new things and learning and developing. Yeah.
What are the most exciting things you're learning about right now?
Well, negotiation is a high this year.
Negotiation?
There were a couple of negotiations, yes.
And I think recently we've started doing more scenography work. Like we had times when we did more like our own restaurant projects, more like pop-up things and stuff. And this and last year we did more in a scenography and like creating tablescapes, creating decorations, stuff like everything design-wise that needs
Scenography. Okay.
Sorry for non-native English speaker here.
So basically for an event, we design. We're not the ones cooking. We just design everything around it, from the table decoration, the table, the flowers, the menu card, the storytelling in the menu card, the pictures, the styling of the pictures, the media work maybe. So it's everything around it, but not the environment exactly, because people realize that the food is a very important part of it, but it on its own is not enough. You need to create the whole world around it.
What advice would you give yourself if you were 20 years old? Or rather, what advice would you give to a 20-year-old at ETH these days? One piece of advice.
I think the most important element of our job, and also why it works, is because we love it. And if you go with what you love and you're passionate about, I think there will be a job, or you can create a job. And if you're not passionate about it, then I think it will always be hard, or things that it will be work. And yes, to me, it's I would do the exact same thing even if this wasn't my job. So, and I think people can trust themselves to what they love and make a job out of it. And as someone said, it's better to create your job than to find your job.
Very cool. Remo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think everybody has a gut feeling about what they do at the moment, whether it's something they really love and are passionate about, or whether it's something that's all right and acceptable, or whether they actually feel that that's not going to work out in the long run. And I would be really dreadful of the feeling that you do something where you always feel that that's not going to work out, but you still keep going. So I would say, follow your follow your instinct, and I wouldn't say creating your own job is necessary, but leave the job you have if it doesn't at least make you content.
That's great advice. I've always been happiest when I've created my own job, so totally buy onto that. So I'd like to close by asking you some questions we ask each of our guests. First off, when you were a little boy and little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Classic. An astronaut.
Oh man, that is one of our most popular answers here on the ETH. We Are ETH podcast.
Pretty cliche, yes.
Good, Remo?
I think I was the same as a child as I am now. I didn't really think ahead too far. I wanted to have a fun next birthday. And I didn't really think much beyond that.
Maybe a party planner.
Somehow I'm still that way. I don't have any 10-year or 20-year plans. I live very much in the now.
What books are you reading right now or listening to?
Well, yours is going to be a cookbook, so should I?
Yes, I actually thought about this. So my favorite cookbook, which I also have pulled out of the shelves over the years, is a cookbook by a restaurant no longer open, sadly, in Copenhagen called Relais. The book is called The Book of Ideas. It has recipes, it has dishes from the restaurant, but I'm just so drawn to the simplicity of it and the approach to it. And it's still, I think, in my life, my favorite restaurant in the world and the best dish I've eaten, or the best restaurant experience I had in my life.
Fabulous. Remo?
I'm currently reading Goliath's Curse, which I think it came out this summer by an Australian researcher. I can't really recall the name now. Goliath's Curse. It's about the rise and fall of civilizations, and hugely interesting in a historical context from indigenous cultures, but also Egyptians and Greece and Rome and everything. But then, it gets a bit sinister when it comes to present times. But it's very interesting to put the past and the present in context of that, and very. I like to read sinister stuff.
Very cool. And finally, favorite place for a cup of coffee in Zurich?
It's easy for me. It's called Coffee.
Coffee K-A-F-I or Coffee C-O-F-F-E-E?
Coffee C-O-F-F-E-E. It's a tiny specialty coffee shop in Wiedikon in Zurich. I got to know the owners over time because it's so tiny you can't help but interact with everybody who's there. And we were lucky enough that one of the founders and head roaster at Stoll Coffee was one of the speakers at our Coffee Cook the Science lectures.
Very cool. And they serve Stoll's roasted coffee?
Yes, especially coffee from Stoll. Yes, Thomas.
Sweet.
Yes.
Remo?
For me, it's Annie K. At the Annie Klaverplatz near Lochergut in Zurich. It's a old Iranian lady who does that little kiosk all by her own, and her son taught her how exactly to calibrate the coffee machine. And she talks a lot. She's very often fun, but she talks a lot, and she's slow, but she does great, amazing coffee, and it's a cute little plaza to sit and see the people walking and bicycling by. It's really cool environment.
That sounds great. Listen, thank you both so much. That was a great conversation. I've got 3 more pages of questions, but we're at the top of the hour and I got to stop.
Cool.
That
was great fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In this episode of the We Are ETH podcast, I talked to Sue Tobler and Remo Gisi of Tastelab about their dedication to how the worlds of food and science intersect, about how those two worlds really will intersect, and where these things are all going. I'd like to close by saying this is the We Are ETH podcast. I'm the host, and this tells the story of the alumni and trends of Friends of the ETH Zurich, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. ETH regularly ranks amongst the top universities of the world in terms of its research, its science, and its people, the people who were there and the people who are there, and of course the people who will be there. If you like today's podcast, please subscribe and give us a good rating on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, or wherever you listen. And to close, I'd like to thank our producers at LE Media and the ETH Alumni, and to thank you, our listeners, for joining us.